Let's get to 5 headlines. So Joe Biden went to Kenosha yesterday. We'll get right to the inevitable Joe Biden moment while speaking to people at a church. He got away from race baiting and throwing police under the bus for a moment to talk about taxes for some reason, but then he stopped himself, and this happened.
19 corporations making $1 billion apiece don't pay a single penny in taxes. I'm not going to punish anybody, but everybody should pay a fair share. And I can lay out for you. I won't now because they'll shoot me. But here's the deal.
They'll shoot me. Yeah, Joe, not the best joke given the circumstances. Earlier in the day, the Biden campaign, speaking of race baiting, released an ad. And it is, I almost hesitate to say it because there's so much competition, but it is perhaps the most disingenuous and misleading political ad I've ever seen in my life. Here's how that went.
Why in this nation do Black Americans wake up knowing that they could lose their life in the course of just living their life?
Part of the point of freedom is to be free from brutality, from injustice, from racism, and all of its manifestations.
We have to let people know that we not only understand their struggle, but they understand the fact they deserve to be treated with dignity. They gotta know we're listening.
Reforming policing in this country means creating a national standard on use of force and conditioning federal funds for police departments on adoption of that standard. It's about reining in qualified immunity. We hold police officers accountable.
We can't turn away. Now is the time for racial justice. I believe with every fiber in my being, we have such an opportunity now to change people's lives for the better. It's about who we are, what we believe, and maybe most importantly, who we want to be.
Now is the time for racial justice, he says, at the age of 78. After spending like 5 decades in public service, now is the time? It wasn't before, Joe? You're just deciding right now is the time? I mean, you've just now decided that white supremacist police officers are out murdering black people in droves, and we should stop them? Did you not want to stop them before? Or did you only recently decide that this problem existed? If so, what made you decide that, Joe? I could ask the same question about when you exactly decided that women can have penises and men can get pregnant, because that apparently you believe now also. That seems to be a rather new point of view and a kind of a strange point of view for a person to adopt in their 70s. Biden lived his whole life, then got to the age of like 75. Suddenly he woke up in a world where racist cops are murdering black people and men are running around having babies. He never mentioned anything about any of this before. Now, all of a sudden, though, he's talking about it. This has got to be the weirdest flip-flop in American history, and the media never asks him about it. He's never asked to justify it. Never. They never say, hey, Joe, when did these hallucinations begin? Also in the ad, Joe asks, why in this nation do black Americans wake up knowing that they could lose their life in the course of just living their life? What? That's the case for all Americans and all people. Everyone eventually loses their life in the course of living their life. When else are you going to lose it? Are you going to lose your life after you've already lost it? Are you going to lose your life while not in the course of living it? Makes no sense. But of course, what he means to imply is that racist cops are prowling the streets, executing black people en masse. That's what he means to say there. That's what he's getting at. And again, we go back to, when did Joe Biden develop these paranoid delusions? He never mentioned it before. Now it's a thing. Because, of course, these claims about racist, black people have to live in fear because racist white people are out hunting and killing them, completely disconnected from reality. There is no evidence of any kind, period, to support it. Joe Biden knows that, though. But, if he has to inflame racial tensions and all of that in order to grasp onto power so he can live the last few years of his barely sentient life at this point, having the power that he's thirsted for his whole life, then he's fine. He'll do that. He'll help just destroy the country on his way out the door. Great guy, that Joe Biden. What a decent man that Joe Biden is. Such a decent man. Number two, speaking of decent men, Michael Reinl, the man who murdered the Trump supporter in Portland, was shot dead by law enforcement yesterday while they tried to arrest him. The U.S. Marshals say that he pulled a gun while they were trying to apprehend him, and he was killed. And now I say this in all sincerity. You know, I really am curious to see if Reinl is the first white man killed by law enforcement that BLM decides to get outraged about. I really don't know. I have no idea. It's kind of 50-50. If they, not that there's any reason to be outraged by it, but that hasn't generally stopped BLM in the past. So I'm just curious if they'll break their policy of ignoring white death entirely for Reinl. I guess we'll see. All right, now to the Daily Wire has the report. As I pull it up, here it is. The California State Senate passed a controversial reform to its sex offender registry Monday that would allow a young adult who has gay sex with a minor to escape registering, in some cases, for the sex offender registry, based on a judge's discretion. SB 145 finally passed the 40-member state Senate by a vote of 23-10 after being introduced by California State Senator Scott Wiener. Wiener argued that the current law discriminates against LGBT youth because, as the Chronicle explained, under current law, a judge can decide whether to place a man who has vaginal intercourse with an underage teenage girl on the sex offender registry based on the facts of the case. But if anal or oral sex or vaginal penetration with anything other than a penis is involved, the adult must register as a sex offender. Under SB 145, if a young adult has gay sex with a minor 14 or older who is less than 10 years younger, a judge will have the discretion whether to place the individual on the sex offender registry. Okay, and as you heard there, the justification being given for this is that in some cases, when a heterosexual man vaginally rapes a child, they are not put on the sex offender registry, and so as Wiener is arguing here, the same should go for gay men. I really don't think I need to spend time explaining the problem with this logic. But I spend most of my show explaining logic that probably doesn't need to be explained, so we'll do it here too. The obvious problem here is if you're going to pass a bill to address this disparity, the bill should be one that ensures that men who vaginally rape children go to jail and are treated more harshly than they are. That's the problem. Okay? That's what we need to address. If in California there could be cases where a 24, because this is the implications, you could have a 24-year-old man raping a 14-year-old child, and they might not go on the sex offender registry for that. That's the way the law is set up. At least if it's vaginal rape, man-woman vaginal rape, or man-child, I should say. Okay, well, yes, I agree. Let's pass a law about that, but let's pass a law that does away with that insanity and ensures that a man who does that goes to prison. How about, I don't know, forever? At a minimum? I could think of harsher penalties also that we could consider. But no, what the Democrats are saying is, no, let's make it even. What they're saying is, if this kind of child rape is legal, then this kind of child rape over here should also be legal. What kind of degenerate lunacy is that? And this guy has, he's going around in the media complaining and making a martyr of himself because all the death threats he's getting. Of course, death threats are bad. Nobody supports death threats, but if people are angry at him, it's because he's trying to decriminalize certain forms of child rape. And the argument he's making in favor of it is that, well, that kind is legal. Disgusting, ridiculous, repulsive, but that's the Democrat Party for you. That's the Democrat Party, not just in California, but everywhere. All right, let's move on. Number 4. I actually forgot number 4. I have number 4 written down here for my 5 headlines, and I never wrote a number 4. This is a professional operation. So we're going to skip right over number 4. Maybe we could talk. Maybe number 4 was going to be the Atlantic story about Donald Trump. You've probably heard by now, or they're claiming, unnamed sources claiming that Donald Trump was insulting, wounded veterans and calling them losers, and He didn't want to visit a grave of a veteran cemetery because he said they're losers because they died. All unnamed sources, no one on the record, and it's, if something like that actually happened and he actually said that, and you're in the administration or you heard it, then you go on the record and tell your story. The unnamed sources thing, no. And by the way, at least 5 named sources have come out and denied this and said, so you've got all the named sources are saying it didn't happen. Only the unnamed sources are saying it did. So you decide how to interpret that, but I'll tell you how to interpret it. It's BS. Okay, number 5, Prince Harry and Meghan have signed apparently a mega Netflix deal. They're going to be producing a whole bunch of documentaries and other shows, most of the content about themselves, presumably. I'm just wondering, who would want to watch this? I don't know. Aren't these two of the most boring people on earth? And I say this, I'm sincerely perplexed here. Why would anyone care what they're doing with their lives? Who wants to hear from these two? Could there be anything less interesting than the story of 2 rich people who don't have jobs? I mean, nothing against them. If I could have a life like that, I'd take it. But I'm not going to pretend that my life is interesting. What would a reality show of these two consists of? What would be the conflict that drives the narrative? They have a disagreement about what kind of caviar to serve at their 2-year-old's birthday party. I don't know. Anyway, the LA Times has a statement from the couple. This is what the statement says. Our lives, both independent of each other and as a couple, have allowed us to understand the power of the human spirit, of courage, resilience, and the need for connection. Though our work with diverse communities and their environments, through our work with diverse communities and their environments, to shining a light on people and causes around the world, our focus will be on creating content that informs but also gives hope. Oh my gosh. Did they just call themselves courageous and resilient? Did they just say the lesson that they've taken from their life experiences is the value of courage? They did, didn't they? And it goes on. Harry and Meghan, whose son Archie is 15 months old, added that making inspirational family programming is important to them, as is, quote, powerful storytelling through a truthful and relatable lens. They said that Netflix's reach will help them, quote, share impactful content that unlocks action. What? They're also committed to amplifying diverse voices in front of and behind the camera, as well as diverse hiring practices for roles they're filling at their production company. I'm going to be sick. I would honestly rather be skinned alive and thrown into a fire filled with snakes, burning snakes with hepatitis. I would rather that than spend 5 seconds watching anything these two produce. But congrats to them on their Netflix deal. I'm sure it'll be great. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.